The murmurs started before the lock beeped red. You know that kind of silence that feels loaded, like the whole office is holding its breath right after someone drops a glass? That was the mood on the entire 6th floor when I walked in that morning. I passed Daniel from procurement, usually a nonstop talker about his fantasy football league, and he couldn't even look at me. Then came Lydia, the queen of passive-aggressive emails with smiley faces in every sentence. She actually winced. This woman once told an intern her presentation was brave for someone still learning PowerPoint, and even she looked like she wanted to disappear. I reached the security gate and tapped my badge. Nothing. Tried again. Still red. Third time, the guard just shook his head. "You might want to check with HR," he said without pretending to make a call. That tone, resigned, rehearsed, told me everything. Everyone already knew. By the time I reached HR, I saw it. My photo printed, pinned dead center on the glass wall. Like a wanted poster, under the words written in thick red marker, "Needs a lesson." I froze. Not from fear. From disbelief so sharp it short-circuited the rage. And then came the voice I'd imagined strangling 100 times in the shower. "Morning, Danielle," said Chad Lawson, leaning against the doorframe like a discount Bond villain, protein shake in hand. "Just a little accountability exercise," he added with that smirk I'd memorized from every pointless meeting. "You've been kind of, off with your tone lately. Tone. Not the $15,000 budget discrepancy I corrected last week. Not the 3 vendor inconsistencies I flagged that saved him from another audit. Tone." I stared at him, dead-eyed. "Noted," I said evenly, turned to the HR rep, pretending to find something fascinating on her laptop screen, and walked out. I packed my plant, charger, and the mug that said, "I'm silently fixing your math." I left the coffee. Let him see what it feels like to lose something that actually matters. Here's the thing, and I say this without ego. I was essential. Not the kind of team spirit essential they talk about in onboarding slides, but the kind that keeps the engine from exploding at 2 a.m. when invoices stall and reports fail validation. I was the quiet one who made sure the machine never jammed. So, when I left, I didn't leave empty-handed. I left with what mattered. The knowledge, the triggers, the quiet safeguards I'd built into the system. Not sabotage. Insurance. That's what happens when you've spent years being called too meticulous, too rigid, too intense. You learn to protect yourself with structure. You don't weaponize it. You just stop shielding others from their own mess. I got in my car, air conditioner blasting, the little desk plant riding shotgun like a witness. My phone stayed quiet. No one called. Perfect. Let them sit in the silence they created. I didn't even make it out of the parking lot before the first domino fell. An automatic email triggered to the CFO, Rebecca Green, the only executive I respected in that entire building. The subject line read, "Clause 9-12 Activation Notice." 10 words in the body. Per policy, deactivation triggers dual authorization lock. See Doc 912. Then another email, this time BCC'd to legal for good measure. "Hi Aaron, please confirm execution of transfer freeze per standing agreement. Triggered today at 10:48 a.m. via credential deactivation. Will await reinstatement authority." I could practically hear Aaron's nervous little "oh no" through the ether. Aaron didn't like surprises, especially the kind that froze 7 figures of vendor payouts the same week as a compliance review. While they started panicking, I called my accountant. "Cancel my direct deposit," I said. "Move everything to the holding account." She paused. "So, we're doing it?" "Yep," I said. "Light the fuse." She laughed. "Proud of you, Danny." It hit me then. This wasn't revenge. It was release. Years of pressure finally finding a valve. I didn't set a fire. I just stopped holding up the ceiling. If it collapsed, that was gravity's problem, not mine. In my rearview mirror, Lawson's building shrank into beige nothingness, a hollow tower built on arrogance and unpaid overtime. Inside, they'd soon discover that Clause 912 wasn't a myth or a glitch. It was a protection buried in their own continuity plan, one I'd quietly revised 6 months ago when the board asked for a leaner process. They signed off on it without reading the fine print. And now that they'd pulled the wrong thread, the fabric was going to unravel. Slowly, perfectly, and all by design. By the time I hit the freeway, the damage was already blooming. At 10:52 a.m., First Union Corporate Bank flagged an automatic halt on outgoing transfers. The system log would show one reason: dual authorization pending, Clause 9.12. Inside Lawson's shiny little kingdom, the first to notice was a junior analyst named Trevor. 23, new haircut every Friday, always calling me Miss Danielle like I was his high school math teacher. He stared at his monitor as the payment to South Point Couriers bounced back with an error code he'd never seen before. "Weird," he muttered, trying to override it. The system replied with a single polite refusal. Access denied. He pinged his supervisor, Megan, who was halfway through a protein bar and a gossip thread about someone's engagement. "System says I need Danielle's token," he typed. Megan frowned. "What do you mean?" "She's gone." "Yeah, but it says her key's required to push batch 6. "Just skip it," Megan said. "Run the next one." The next one failed too. And the next. By 11:30, the finance Slack channel had turned into a polite riot. Anyone else getting delays on vendor payments? Batch 9 frozen. Payroll script isn't running. Who's got backup routing authority? Someone even tagged Chad. Big mistake. His response? Just reboot the payment node, as if he had any idea what a node was. I was at home, sitting cross-legged on the couch, in a hoodie that still smelled like stale coffee, watching a documentary about shipwrecks. My phone buzzed 6 times, then stopped. I didn't answer any of them. They could stew in the mess they made. I'd spent 5 years quietly patching leaks while they threw slogans like confetti. We run lean. We run bold. We run first. First to bankruptcy, maybe. By early afternoon, the first real panic set in. The CFO's inbox flooded with vendor complaints. Payment confirmations stalled. Scheduled wire batches failed to execute. The automated audit bot began flagging compliance mismatches. The kind of thing that doesn't happen unless someone yanks a critical credential without protocol. Rebecca, who to her credit always kept her head when the room caught fire, was the first to connect the dots. At 1:14 p.m., she received a message from Aaron in legal. "Need confirmation. Danielle Turner's access deactivated this morning? Trigger appears tied to Clause 912 lockout." Rebecca froze. She opened the policy archive, typed 912, and found the clause I'd slipped in last October. It stated, in plain English, that the removal of any Tier 2 financial infrastructure officer without HR documentation or formal exit review would trigger an automatic freeze on all outgoing transfers above $10,000 until dual authorization was verified by both compliance and legal. She read it twice, then a third time, and realized exactly what I had done. At 2:07 p.m., she called Chad. "What the hell did you do?" she asked before he could even fake a greeting. "What?" he stammered. I didn't do anything. HR handled it. Just a performance issue. Tone? She repeated, her voice so calm it was terrifying. "You pinned her face on a wall and revoked her credentials. Do you realize she wrote Clause 912? Silence. "She what?" "She authored it, Chad. You just triggered a compliance lockdown." Meanwhile, down in accounts payable, the interns were turning pale. The vendor list grew redder by the minute. Delta Core Logistics, Freeman and Associates, Western Transit, all marked pending authorization. The finance floor was vibrating with quiet dread. At 3:45 p.m., Rebecca walked through the bullpen like a storm in heels. She ignored the looks, the whispered "oh gods," the hopeful glances toward the conference room. She didn't stop until she reached Chad's office. He was mid-brag to a client on speakerphone about restructuring inefficiencies. She disconnected the call, handed him a printed report, and said, "Read the highlighted line." He squinted. "What's this?" "It's the line that says, 'We can't pay anyone until you undo the disaster you caused.'" By 4, the first vendor had called twice. By 5, payroll was frozen. By 6, Rebecca had stopped speaking to him entirely. And me? I was eating cereal for dinner, watching the sun drop behind my apartment blinds, while somewhere downtown, a grown man was realizing that an accountability exercise had just shut down his entire company. I didn't touch a single line of code. I didn't send a single threat. All I did was walk away and let gravity handle the rest. By the next morning, panic had calcified into silence. You could practically hear the hum of anxiety radiating through the building's glass walls. When Rebecca arrived, early as always, the front desk receptionist whispered something and handed her a printout. She didn't even read it there. She marched straight to the executive suite, navy blazer sharp enough to cut glass. Chad was already there, hunched over his laptop, trying to look busy. Inside. "Now," she said. No greeting, no smile. He followed, attempting that half smirk he thought conveyed confidence. "Look, Rebecca, I know things are a little messy, but let's not overreact. It's just a system hiccup." She shut the door behind them so hard the glass trembled. "A system hiccup?" she repeated. "The bank has frozen every transfer above 10 grand. That includes payroll, escrow, vendor disbursements. Legal's already flagged this as a possible compliance breach." Chad blinked. "Breach? It's just a glitch." Rebecca threw a folder on the table. "Clause 912. He frowned, eyes darting across the pages. "What am I looking at?" "You're looking at the clause Danielle Turner drafted last October. The one you approved without reading. It says that if a Tier 2 infrastructure officer's credentials are removed without proper HR documentation, the system triggers a full dual authorization lockdown." She paused. "You signed it, Chad." He stared at his own initials, frozen. "Wait, so she set this up?" "No," Rebecca said coldly. "She protected us from you. You just didn't understand what she was protecting us from." In the bullpen outside, people pretended to work, eyes glued to their monitors while trying to listen through the walls. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Trevor whispered to Megan, "Is he fired?" She shook her head slightly. "Not yet, but he will be." By 10 a.m., legal joined the party. Monica Ruiz, internal counsel, thin frame, thick glasses, calm like a guillotine before the drop, walked in holding a black binder. "We've got a problem," she said, sitting beside Rebecca. "Clause 912 isn't just an internal safeguard. Because Danielle's classified as critical financial infrastructure, her removal without cause constitutes an internal control breach under Section 108 of the Federal Data Integrity Act." Chad blinked again, slower this time. "What does that mean?" "It means," Monica said, "if we don't self-report within 72 hours, we're looking at federal fines starting at $250,000 and potential contract suspension." Rebecca didn't look away from him. "You hung her photo on a wall, Chad. You made a spectacle of the person who reconciled every dollar that's passed through this company for 5 years. And you did it without process. It was just a joke," he stammered. "Motivation." She was being difficult. Monica's eyebrows didn't move. "You humiliated a critical officer. You bypassed HR, IT, and compliance. You may have violated state employment law and federal reporting standards." He turned red. "She overreacted." Rebecca stood up, her tone flat, and final. No. You underprepared. She gestured to Monica. Get him out of the system. Full credentials freeze. Effective immediately. As Monica typed the command into her laptop, Chad's phone buzzed twice. Vendor calls. He ignored them. The third buzz came from HR. Subject line, meeting at 2:00 p.m. His throat went dry. Outside, the finance department was unraveling. Trevor had stopped pretending. Batch 11's dead too, he muttered. Even manual overrides need Danielle's signature. Megan looked like she was about to cry. What does that even mean? It means, Rebecca said, stepping into the bullpen, you're about to learn exactly how replaceable she wasn't. By lunchtime, 3 vendors had suspended service. The logistics partner froze shipments. Payroll deadlines came and went. The once proud slogan, "We run lean, we run first," now looked like a sick joke plastered on screensaver loops across the office. And me? I was sitting in my kitchen, sipping orange juice from a wine glass, watching their LinkedIn pages update in real time, experiencing temporary payment delays, working through system challenges, grateful for teamwork during transitions. Translation. Danielle broke the machine, except I hadn't broken it. I just stopped fixing it. By Thursday morning, the company was in full meltdown mode disguised as business continuity. HR had turned the break room into a makeshift war zone of lukewarm coffee, crumpled printouts, and panic in business casual. Karen Holt, head of HR and self-proclaimed People First leader, was barking orders through a headset like she was directing air traffic. Find the form, any form. We just need a record that her removal was pre-approved. Her assistant stammered, but there wasn't one. Karen snapped, then make it look like there was. They tried to reconstruct the non-existent paper trail. Emails, timestamps, signatures. But there was no hiding the fact that Chad had yanked my credentials on a whim. HR can't file vibes, and the bank doesn't honor ego. At 10:06 a.m., Rebecca walked into the bullpen holding her tablet, every step a countdown. Attention, everyone, she said, voice steady. Effective immediately, all vendor communications are to route through legal. No manual transfers, no exceptions. Nobody asked questions. They all knew why. The CFO's tone said more than any memo could. Meanwhile, the outside world was catching on. Northway Transport, one of the company's oldest clients, had just sent an email with the subject line, "Payment verification failure, immediate response requested." Inside was a line that made even Rebecca's pulse jump. Until this issue is resolved, our account will remain suspended. Translation: millions frozen. In Chad's office, the walls were closing in. He was sweating through his designer shirt, still trying to spin the narrative. We can fix this, he muttered to Rebecca and Monica. We'll get at T to override whatever she did. She can't be the only one with access. Monica didn't even look up from her laptop. She didn't do anything, Chad. You removed the key piece of infrastructure, her credentials. Clause 912 is an automatic system response. No override until compliance signs off. Rebecca's phone buzzed. It was the audit liaison from Fremont Federal Compliance Services, the external agency that certified the company's financial controls. We've received an alert from your bank about a dual authorization lock, the voice said. Is this related to an internal personnel event? Rebecca closed her eyes briefly. Yes, she said, and we're addressing it. She hung up and looked at Chad, who was pretending to straighten his tie. Congratulations, she said quietly. You just turned a minor personnel issue into a federal audit trigger. Downstairs, the compliance officer, Moira Lang, entered the finance department like a grim reaper in kitten heels. She carried a black binder labeled D. Turner, Protocols. Without a word, she set it on Chad's desk. We're doing a spot review, she said. Her Q1 audit flagged irregular overrides. I need to trace them. Chad forced a laugh. Oh, that's all handled. Legacy stuff. She was always paranoid about controls. Moira's stare could have frozen lava. Did you authorize these overrides? He hesitated. Some of them, for efficiency. She flipped the binder open. These entries bypassed internal thresholds. No two-key confirmation, no compliance timestamp. That's not efficiency. That's negligence. The color drained from his face. The system flagged them, she continued, but Danielle left notations in the logs. Her final audit trail is immaculate. He blinked. She left notes? Yes, Moira said. Cross-referenced, dated, documented. She warned about the exact vulnerabilities you created. She paused, eyes sharp. Did you even read her continuity report? He didn't answer. Moira turned to Rebecca. He removed her without HR protocol, correct? Rebecca nodded once. Moira scribbled something on her pad. Then it's not just a compliance breach. It's a governance failure. That afternoon, Legal sent an internal memo with one line highlighted in red. Pending investigation under the Federal Data Integrity Act. The words might as well have been a death sentence. While the building sank into bureaucratic chaos, I was sitting in my living room, laptop open, watching it unfold through news feeds and whispered updates from old colleagues brave enough to text me. The group chat once used for Friday memes now looked like a distress signal. Payroll still frozen. Vendors threatening legal action. Chad hasn't left his office in hours. I didn't reply. I just smiled, sipped my coffee, and thought about how strange it was to watch a system you'd built to protect them finally protect you. They'd mistaken my structure for stubbornness, my precision for paranoia. And now they were learning the cost of not listening. By Friday morning, the office was a morgue with Wi-Fi. The fluorescent lights hummed above exhausted faces. Every monitor filled with frozen payment dashboards and unanswered vendor threads. The only sound was the rhythmic clack of Rebecca's heels as she crossed the executive corridor toward the legal wing. She didn't stop until she reached the conference room reserved for high-risk meetings, the kind where someone usually leaves without a job. Inside sat Chad, pale and swollen around the eyes, trying to look composed. Across from him was Monica Ruiz from legal, and next to her, a young associate named Emily Tran, flipping through a PDF on her tablet. Rebecca closed the door, tossed a folder onto the table, and said flatly, "We found it." Chad blinked. "Found what?" "The addendum to Danielle Turner's employment agreement," Monica said, tapping the screen. Addendum 6. Clause 912 designates her as Tier 2 critical infrastructure. Her removal without documented cause or HR process triggers an automatic freeze on all high-value transactions. It also requires us to notify our banking custodians and the Federal Compliance Registry within 72 hours. Chad leaned back, trying to laugh. "Okay, but come on. That's just boilerplate legalese, right? We can just override it or something?" Emily looked up, calm as a scalpel. "No, Mr. Lawson. It's not boilerplate. It's binding. And your signature is right here." She rotated the tablet toward him. There, next to my clause, sat his initials and timestamp from last year's compliance update. He stared like it might vanish if he squinted hard enough. Rebecca folded her arms. "You signed off on a clause you didn't read. Now it's protecting us from your incompetence." Chad's voice cracked. "She set me up." "No," Monica said, eyes cold. "She set us up for protection. You just didn't bother to understand what she was protecting us from." He turned to Rebecca, desperate. "So what now? What does this mean for me?" "It means," she said, "that we're in documented breach of federal data handling standards. It means we self-report or face fines starting at $250,000. And it means you need to start packing your things." Outside the glass wall, the finance department had gone still. Everyone pretended to type while watching through the reflection. They couldn't hear the words, but they saw enough. The body language, the folder, Chad's slack jaw. And they knew. The reign of performative leadership was ending. Meanwhile, Moira from compliance had finished her internal review and sent a summary to legal. It was brutal. Multiple unlogged overrides, missing authorizations, and audit flags ignored by management. At the bottom, one line stood out in red. Root cause, removal of compliance officer without process. Triggering clause 9.12, lockout. Rebecca forwarded the report to the board before lunch. By 2:00 p.m., the entire leadership team was summoned to the 11th floor conference suite. The blinds were drawn, the coffee untouched. Monica opened with the facts. Rebecca followed with the numbers. Millions in halted transfers, 3 suspended vendor contracts, and 1 government client already requesting verification of internal control integrity. The chairman, a silver-haired man named Douglas Hart, rubbed his temple. "You're telling me this entire mess started because someone took a photo off the wall?" Rebecca didn't flinch. "They didn't take it down, sir. They pinned it up." Douglas blinked. "What?" "They posted her picture with the caption, 'Needs a lesson,'" Rebecca said. "That's what triggered this. For a full 10 seconds, the room was silent except for the faint hum of the air vent. Then Douglas exhaled. Christ. He turned to Chad. "Do you realize what you've done?" "It was—" Chad started, but Douglas raised a hand. "Save it. You're suspended effective immediately. HR will coordinate your exit." The meeting continued without him. Monica laid out the reality. To lift the freeze, they needed Danielle's cooperation. She was the only one authorized under the continuity plan to reactivate the financial systems. Rebecca hesitated before saying it aloud. "We'll have to contact her." Douglas nodded grimly. "Do it. Offer whatever it takes." By that evening, HR drafted a letter full of hollow corporate sincerity. An unfortunate misunderstanding, mutual respect, opportunity to collaborate for resolution. They called it a consulting request. I received it at 6:48 p.m., right as I was pouring a glass of bourbon. The subject line read, "Proposal for temporary engagement. Urgent." I didn't open it right away. I didn't need to. I already knew what it said. The email from my old company sat unopened in my inbox, glowing like a desperate apology that came too late. I let it sit there while I finished my drink. The bourbon was cheap, but it burned with the kind of satisfaction that money can't buy. My phone buzzed again. Different domain this time. Cresswell Logistics Partners. The subject line read simply, "Exploring a possibility. Curiosity 1." I opened it. "Danielle," it began, "we heard you might be available. I won't waste your time. We've reviewed your work on the compliance continuity framework at Haverly Systems, particularly Clause 9.12. Your documentation was, frankly, elegant. Our CFO would like to meet. The offer is immediate. Mark Hayes, COO, Cresswell Logistics." I read it twice, then smiled. The rival firm. The one Chad's company had lost a $50 million federal logistics contract to just 3 months earlier. They'd beaten us by a hair. Or at least, that's what Chad told the board. Turns out, that hair was compliance width. I replied in 4 words. "Thank you. Let's talk." By 11:30 a.m. the next morning, I was on a video call with Mark, his CFO, Linda Shaw, and their general counsel. No corporate theatrics, no ego in sight. Just smart people asking precise questions. "How did you build redundancy into a live financial ecosystem without sacrificing speed?" Mark asked. I explained my framework: automated verification, multi-auth triggers, tiered controls that couldn't be overridden by personality. Linda nodded through every word like she was mentally firing half her department. I didn't ask for a signing bonus. They offered it anyway. More than I made in 2 years under Chad's thumb. They gave me a private compliance sandbox, my own team, and for once, a voice that mattered. I signed the offer at 2:47 p.m., exhaled, and finally opened the email from Haverly Systems. Rebecca's tone was polite, precise, and unmistakably desperate. Danielle, in order to restore full financial operations and pass our upcoming audit, we will require your assistance for at least 30 days. This is not optional. Not optional. The irony almost made me laugh. She'd attached a draft agreement, temporary consultant engagement, executive rate, reinstatement of credentials for system reactivation. It was padded with phrases like mutual understanding and valuable collaboration, but the subtext screamed, "Please come back and stop the bleeding." They even tried to frame it as an opportunity to help the company realign. Realign. The same company that had plastered my face under needs a lesson. I didn't reply. By 5 p.m., Cresswell's HR had overnighted a laptop, a badge, and a welcome note. "We're honored to have you. Let's build something that lasts." The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. Old habits die hard. I made coffee, fed my cat, and walked out onto the balcony just as the sun broke through the clouds. My neighbor's dog barked at nothing. It was peaceful. Almost too peaceful after years of corporate chaos. When I logged into Cresswell's system for the first time, my badge worked on the first swipe. No red light, no awkward wait. Just a clean ding and a green glow that said welcome. That same hour, across town, Haverly's boardroom was a scene from a slow-motion car crash. Rebecca sat at the head of the table, hair pulled back, face drawn. Around her, executives whispered terms like self-report, fine mitigation, and contract suspension. Legal had confirmed what she already knew. Without my authorization, their system couldn't process transfers over $10,000. "Has she responded?" Douglas Hart asked. Rebecca shook her head. "No." "Follow up," he said. She hesitated. "Sir, I don't think she will." The silence that followed was heavy enough to bend steel. Every person in that room understood the truth. I hadn't destroyed them. I'd just stopped holding them up. By the end of the week, Cresswell announced my hire internally. The email read, "Danielle Turner joins as Director of Compliance Architecture." My new office overlooked the river. The chair was ergonomic, the coffee strong, and for the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for impact. Revenge, I realized, isn't fire or fury. It's silence. It's success that doesn't need an audience, and mine was just beginning. The emergency board meeting at Haverly Systems started at 7 a.m. sharp on Monday, the kind of hour reserved for disasters. The cleaning crew hadn't even finished vacuuming when the executives shuffled in, half awake, half terrified. Rebecca sat at the head of the walnut conference table, her blazer navy, expression neutral but lethal. She had one folder in front of her, the same one she'd been clutching for 3 straight days. "Let's get to it," she said. "Our financial system is still frozen. Every external transfer over $10,000 remains locked. 2 federal vendors have suspended contracts pending verification, and if we don't report within 48 hours, we're facing regulatory penalties." A board member with too much cologne and too little patience leaned forward. "You're saying a single clause shut us down?" Rebecca shook her head. "No. Lawson did. The clause just prevented him from doing more damage." All eyes turned to Chad, who looked like he hadn't slept, or shaved, in days. His tie was crooked, his eyes hollow. "It was just a miscommunication," he croaked. "HR was on board. It wasn't even formal." Douglas Hart's voice was low and deliberate. "Step out." Chad blinked. "Excuse me?" "Step out," Hart repeated. "We'll contact you about next steps." He lingered for a moment, like if he moved slowly enough, he could still matter. But when the door shut behind him, The air in the room shifted from chaos to mourning. Rebecca leaned forward. Danielle Turner protected this company from exactly this scenario. She built Clause 912 after Lawson's last attempt to restructure her role out of the retention plan. Legal approved it. He signed it. We ignored it. Now we're living it. Monica from Legal nodded. It's ironclad. We're already in breach. The banks notified the oversight committee. There's no way to bypass without her cooperation. The room went silent. Even the HVAC hum seemed to pause. Someone finally whispered, "Has she replied?" Rebecca's jaw tightened. No. Across town, I was already walking into Cresswell's headquarters. The lobby smelled like espresso and new beginnings. The receptionist smiled, handed me a badge, and said, "Welcome aboard, Ms. Turner." It worked on the first swipe. Green light. Clean start. A woman from operations named Evie led me through the glass hallway to a corner office overlooking the river. "We set up your environment exactly as requested," she said. "Dual monitors, audit sandbox, private network node." She smiled like she actually meant it. "Coffee machine's better than the one at Haverly, right?" I laughed. "Anything's better than Haverly." At 9 sharp, I sat in a glass conference room with the Cresswell leadership team. Mark, Linda, and their CTO. No bluster, no theatrics, just curiosity. Mark smiled. "We read your clause, Danielle. Elegant. You didn't just design a safeguard. You engineered resilience. We'd like you to teach our compliance team how to think like that." Linda added, "We don't want you to fix what's broken. We want you to design something that can't break." I sipped my coffee. Rich, smooth, not the burnt sludge I'd lived on for years, and smiled. "Let's call the first session How Not to Be the Lesson." They laughed, and for the first time in a long time, so did I. Back at Haverly, HR was scrubbing names off directories, security badges were being deactivated, and Lawson's glass office now sat empty except for a cold coffee cup and a note that simply read, "Access revoked." The systems were still locked, payroll delayed, vendors gone silent. The board had stopped pretending this could be fixed with a memo. The damage wasn't revenge, it was revelation. They'd called me replaceable, disposable, a cog. But now they were staring at the hollow space where the engine used to be. By noon, Cresswell's IT team had finished configuring my sandbox. I stood by the window, looking out at the skyline, and realized something simple yet perfect. I never needed to destroy them. I just needed to stop carrying them. When you hold up a structure built on ego, the moment you let go, gravity does the rest. That afternoon, I received one last email from Rebecca. The subject line read, "No hard feelings, just lessons learned." I didn't reply, but I smiled. She would be fine. She always read the fine print. As for Chad, rumor had it he tried to consult for a smaller firm. Lasted 3 weeks. The moment they asked about internal control documentation, he quit. Some people never learn. I closed my laptop, leaned back in my chair, and took a slow breath. Outside, the city shimmered in late sunlight. Inside, the quiet was perfect. Earned, deliberate, mine. They'd once hung my photo under the words, "Needs a lesson." Turns out, I was the lesson, and class was over.